You hung with us through that entire briefing.
I was reliving my days at the State Department through that briefing.
You were giving some color commentary on the way there. So this idea even of a 3-day pause, you could call it a temporary ceasefire, call it whatever you want. Critics say that just plays into Hamas's hands. And I think that Israel is of that mind as well. What do you think?
Well, what are we getting for it would be my first question. You know, are we getting any hostages out? Because to preemptively call for the 3-day ceasefire pause, humanitarian pause, again, I think we're just playing semantics here. But if you don't have definitive guarantees, if you don't have hostages, which are unfortunately basically human shields at this point, if you don't have them ready to go, and then you just call the pause and expect Hamas then to cough them up, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think anybody thinks that's going to work.
Because if you give them a pause to cough up some hostages, maybe they give you 1 or 2, and then they say, well, continue the pause, and maybe we'll give you more. As Sandra pointed out, Kirby really was trying to differentiate between a pause and a ceasefire. Here's what he said right toward the end about a ceasefire.
Humanitarian pauses are as long as they need to be for accomplishing whatever the specific purpose is, whether it's hostages out or aid in or just getting people out. I mean, they have to be as long as they need to be. But just to be clear, to kind of reset here, when we talk about a ceasefire, when you use that term, when that term is applied, a general ceasefire, it connotes a cessation of hostilities for an indefinite period with the purpose of finding an end to the conflict.
He said it would legitimize Hamas's position.
Yeah, I agree with him. I thought he was stronger on the ceasefire point. There is no legitimate reason to call for a ceasefire right now because what is, as everyone has said, and everyone has reaffirmed this, of course it would give Hamas the opportunity to rearm, to fortify their positions. And Israel, I do not believe, can have a ceasefire until they have dismantled the command and control center of Hamas, until they can make sure that it is no longer a threat to the Israeli people. And as it stands today, on this very day, Israel cannot say that to its people. So if you look at it even from a military perspective or from a political perspective, what politician in Israel could stand if they started with a ceasefire right now before the job is done? That's not even a politically tenable situation for any Israeli politician.
If anybody was wondering what Hamas's overall intent is, there was a great article in the New York Times that I pulled a quote from. Ghazi Hamad, who was a former Hamas leader in Lebanon, said that they're going to keep doing October 7th again and again and again. Here's what the New York Times article...
Which is exactly why we have to stop them.
Yeah, here's what the New York Times article said. Hamas leaders say they waged their October 7th attack on Israel because they believe the Palestinian cause was slipping away and that only violence could revive it. I hope that the state of war with Israel will become permanent on all the borders and that the Arab world will stand with us, Taher al-Nunu, a Hamas media advisor, told the New York Times.
So if he's right, effectively what happened with the Abraham Accords, which are the first peace deals between Israel and Arab states in 26 years, is the impossible happened, which is Gulf Arab states recognized Israel's right to exist. They normalized relations without having a deal with the Palestinians in that process. Saudi, as we know, was on their way to making some sort of deal as well. And in fact, I was in Qatar. I was on my way to Israel to meet Arab delegations there with the Atlantic Council when these attacks happened. And so not only were they trying to get the Palestinians and their cause, so to speak, back on the
radar,
news, then the radar, they didn't want peace between Saudi and Israel because they thought that what it would do is it would permanently recognize the right of the Jewish state to exist in the Middle East. It would mean if you have Mecca and Medina making peace with Jerusalem, then that would effectively end the Hamas cause, what they champ for from the river to the sea. Remember, they don't want a two-state solution. They want to get rid of the Jewish people in the Middle East, in Israel, either through death or for forcibly removing them. But again, the whole point was if Saudi and if other countries followed suit and recognized that Israel was a legitimate Jewish state, then that ended the terrorist organization's goals. So they had to get out. They had to get out and do this attack, inflame the Middle East, and stop the ability of the whole Middle East to recognize that there is a Jewish state that has a right to exist and thrive and be a part of the broader community of nations in the Middle East.
You were with the